Check, check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go. And let's go. It is Ballsy Uncut for Sunday, January the 12th, the day after the wild card weekend got started. And as you can see, I'm wearing this Chargers toque. Give me a second. This franchise will always be cursed. They will never win anything. I predicted a Harbaugh AFC championship game, but I was just fooling myself. That was wishful thinking. Justin Herbert didn't play a great game. He has yet to show up in the playoffs. So if I'm going to be critical of Lamar Jackson previously, I got to be critical of Justin Herbert. When you're in the playoffs, first game, back in the day, you can't blow a 27-0 lead and lose 31-30. And then here you threw 3 interceptions all season and you threw 4 in this game. 2 weren't his fault. Guy has no receivers. Like the receivers of the Chargers, besides Ladd McConkey, are embarrassing. Will Disley couldn't catch a bus, let alone a football yesterday at tight end. He should not be your pass-catching tight end. Quentin Johnston, who was a first-round pick, started towards the end of the year to look like a first-round pick, but he is more like a number 4 receiver on most NFL teams. So the Chargers need weapons next year for Herbert, and they need an interior offensive line. The center guard are horrible. The right tackle, the rookie out of Notre Dame, Alt, good player. The guy on the left side, the Pro Bowler, Rashawn Slater, good player. But yeah, they need weapons and they need an interior of the offensive line, and they need to mature a little more on defense, even though they had one of the better defenses in the league. Didn't look so good yesterday, but they were on the field a lot as well. So my Chargers are done. Done. Pathetic. Never win shit. They'll never win shit, even though Harbaugh's there. Harbaugh's won everywhere he's went. And yes, he did turn the team around this year from 5 wins to 11 wins. But here at Ballsy Uncut, we call it like we see it. And they had a mainly weak schedule. So I'll see what they can do next year, and then I'll weigh in, because it seems like the franchise is cursed. And in some ways, I'm not that sad, even though I'm a fan, because I wanted them to stay. Sorry, folks, just got all tangled up here trying to be funny with the toque on, got my headset and everything tangled up. I wanted them to be staying in San Diego. So maybe they're cursed for, turning their backs on the good folks of San Diego. But anyway, Chargers are done. So basically my interest level in the NFL playoffs drops probably in half. I'm going to root for Detroit now. My second team was the Pittsburgh Steelers. People have asked me, why do you wear the Steelers shirt? Well, I was in the running for the Pittsburgh Steelers radio job. Yeah, I applied and was in the running back and forth, but just didn't materialize. They stayed with a local sportscaster, but hey, you give it a shot, right? So I was kind of cheering for the Steelers, but they went downhill too. Ravens ran all over them between Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. That looks unstoppable. I think it's probably going to be a Baltimore Eagles final, although I'm cheering for Detroit. So that's the team I'm rooting for. I'd love to see a Baltimore-Detroit Super Bowl. So today we've got Buffalo and Denver. Sean Payton's done a great job. Probably should be coach of the year with a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix. But we know Oregon quarterbacks don't usually rise to the occasion in the big games because they come from Oregon. We saw Herbert yesterday. And I think Bo Nix might be a little overwhelmed today. I got Buffalo probably pretty handily in this game. I don't know if I'd say maximum blowout, but 10 points for sure. So we got Buffalo. We've got Philadelphia taking on Green Bay. Jalen Hurts will play. Jordan Love is off. They were just being precautionary with his elbow. I think this will be a closer game than people realize, but I think the Eagles will probably win it by 8, even though I'm cheering for Green Bay. So I hope the Eagles wear their Kelly Green unis too, by the way. Those are second to the Chargers for best unis in the league, the Kelly Green Eagle ones. So I've got the Eagles in that one. Sunday Night Football, Tampa against Washington. This could be the most entertaining of the weekend. I like Baker Mayfield. I like Mike Evans. I hope Tampa wins. That'll be a close one. That's a coin toss game. I got Tampa, but it will be close. It's at Raymond James Stadium. And then Monday Night Football has been moved because of the terrible fires in Los Angeles. And it's been moved to Arizona. And, I'm making or cutting down the Chargers, but they're humans. And you got to think that their practice time was distracted this week. Although Jim Harbaugh didn't use that as an excuse, but their practice time was distracted this week and uprooted because of the fires. And then you're humans. Is my house going to be okay? What's going to happen? And you think, well, LA's a big city. I got this from John Ryan, who lives in LA, friend of the show, Regina kid. We know his background. I said, hey, man, are you safe from the fires? He said, just barely. We were packed and ready to go last night. I sent him it yesterday, so it had been the day before. The fires started coming over the canyon and were on a path straight for us. They evacuated within 4 blocks of our house. Luckily, they started water bombing the area until they got some control of it overnight. Also, the wind had changed directions in our favor, but they continue to blast this ridge around us. If the fire gets over that ridge or over the 405, the wind blows east, it will take out the entire city in a matter of days. Yep, that's what happens when you have a Democratic loser running California like Gavin Newsom, or as Trump puts it, Newscum. And you got the city of LA democratically run, cutting fire budgets and all this stuff. Police budgets, fire budgets. That's what happens. Feel bad for those people. And then the dirty insurance companies that some dirty insurance companies, I like to think they're not all dirty, cutting people's insurance before the fires. And ironically enough, I read somewhere, I don't know if this is true or not, but one of those insurance companies cutting the insurance, allegedly, State Farm. Well, where are they playing the game on Monday? Rams Vikings at State Farm Insurance Field in Arizona. So, that game is going to be moved. The 9-8 or 9-8 Rams, or 10-8, 10-7 Rams, it was a barely above 500 record, hosting the 14-3 Minnesota Vikings. That's a joke. It needs to be changed. If it was the CFL, they'd say, oh, what a Bush League. But anyway, I got the Vikings are favored by 2.5. I'm going to bet on Sam Darnold. This is a big-time game for him. If he loses and doesn't play well, then he won't get his big contract, because people will just be prisoners of the moment and forget the great record and everything with the coach. They'll revert back to his early part of his career. Southern California kid going back to California to bet to help his team advance in the playoffs and really probably ensure $50 million a year contract. And then J.J. McCarthy probably moved on from. But if Darnold stumbles, then J.J. McCarthy, the former Michigan Wolverine, who's drafted high by the Vikings, will probably be in next year, as he's a guy that missed the season because of a knee injury. So there you go. I got the Vikes. Not that it matters to you, but I got the Vikes on Monday Night Football. I got the Bucks. I got the Eagles. And I got the Bills pretty handily. But what do I know? I picked the Chargers to cover yesterday. They were 2.5-point favorites in Houston, got blasted 32-12. I've never seen in the NFL, CFL I have, but I've never seen in the NFL a blocked extra point ran back for a safety, but it happened against the Chargers. Of course it did. All right, coming up, we are going to, we'll get to some CFL stuff in a bit, but let's get to our sponsor breaks. And then my talk, not football today, hockey today, with Al Millar, GM of the Regina Pats. He, of course, ran Hockey Canada for a couple of years when they won back-to-back gold medals. We'll talk to him about the not-so-great performance of the World Juniors down in Ottawa, and we'll talk to him about rock and roll. He loves rock and roll. Little rock'em sock'em with Pats GM Al Millar coming up. Here with rock and roll guru and hockey guru Al Millar of the Regina Pats. Now on January 9th, 1984, as we talk now, not 1984, we're talking in 2025, I guess, 41 years ago on this day, 1984, the album came out. That's the very first album I bought with my own money, Van Halen album. My mom didn't like the cover because it had an angel smoking on the front, so she threw it out in a ditch somewhere in Brooks, Alberta. That's the first album I ever purchased. Were you a Van Halen guy?
Yeah, seen them with Roth, seen them with Hagar, seen Roth on his own, seen Hagar and Joe Satriani on this tribute tour recently this summer in Vegas. 1984 album cover, awesome. Panama, Hot for Teacher, Jump, but the sneaky song on there for me that is I'll Wait. I think that's a quiet classic on that album. But hey, Eddie Van Halen drove the bus on that band. We know that, and
Yeah.
yeah, great album.
I was a
Sorry,
Hagar guy.
sorry it ended up in a ditch somewhere because your mom didn't like the cover.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's tough. I was a Hagar guy. I got to go backstage 2004 when they had their kind of reunion tour, but they were fighting by then, and Sammy wouldn't come out of his locker room, and that's the only time. That was the only guy I really like. I wanted to meet Eddie, but he was drunk out of his mind. He shook my hand for 2 minutes and didn't make eye contact. I said, "Man, can I get a picture?" He said, "Sure, but hurry up because I got to take a shit." Imagine they say, "Don't meet your heroes." But Hagar, what was that tour like?
Oh,
Like Sammy Hagar at 77. Think about that guy on stage still playing Al.
I'll tell you, Ballsy, it was unbelievable. I met a buddy who was down there for a conference Friday night, MGM Grand Arena. Joe Satriani, Jason Bonham, Michael Anthony, Sammy Hagar, Van Halen tribute, and I could not believe at 70 whatever years old, 76, 77, how good Sammy Hagar was. It was a great show, and really enjoyed it. But yeah, you know what? It's one of those anomalies in rock, I think. And Journey brought in a karaoke singer and our tribute band singer, and Judas Priest, brought in Tim Owens when Rob Halford stepped away, and that's what the whole movie Rockstar was about, a tribute band guy getting a chance with the big band. John Corabi era with Motley Crue. I don't mind the album, but Motley Crue's not Motley Crue without Vince Neil. But when you look at the Van Halen and the Gary Cherone era, he's great with Extreme. We don't need to worry about his one album with Van Halen. But when you really look at Van Halen and what they accomplished with two singers comparatively in rock and roll history, it's unbelievable. It's probably not being matched in terms of a band changing lead singers and having that type of success.
Well, there's one other, AC/DC. Brian Johnson changed the way he sung to match Bon Scott. If you listen to Brian Johnson's stuff before AC/DC, sounds nothing like him. He was doing Hoover vacuum cleaner ads before they brought him on. They did that album Back in Black in like 2 weeks. Crazy. That's one of the best albums in rock and roll history. We talk about 84, but Back in Black, you can't find a bad song on that album either.
Well, For Those About to Rock is pretty good too.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. AC/DC is we're talking top five.
Yeah.
The other one a little bit underrated, and I'm a big Dio fan.
Yes.
So Dio and Sabbath, Heaven and Hell, that can be in the conversation as well. So I can talk rock all night. Just let me know, Ballsy, if you want to talk hockey. Just let me know.
I want to go have chicken wings and talk rock and roll with you, man. It'll be great. But let's talk some hockey. And let's start with Hockey Canada. You were involved with Hockey Canada. Things did not go, and that's an understatement. Things did not go the way Canada wanted on home soil. You're from 35,000 feet now. Just your thoughts on what happened there at the World Juniors.
Well, couple things. First off, you know the the margin of error at the World Junior Championships, and this is even without Russia, just gets tighter and tighter every year. Like I managed the team in 22 and 23. We won, but both games went to overtime. Finland in overtime, Czechia in overtime. The U.S. is in. I think the U.S. is in a 2-year window here where they were very good. I think Canada's going into a window here for 2 or 3 years where they're going to be very good. So the margin of error isn't what it used to be. Like there's, and I could be wrong, Ballsy, but when Canada won 5 in a row in the early 2000s, it's not going to happen again. The other countries, the quality of players. You see the influx of Europeans in the NHL. It's tight. The Czechs, the Finns, they play hard, they play heavy, they play big. So yeah, things didn't go Canada's way again. But I can tell you, there's quality people at Hockey Canada. Scott Salmon, the senior VP of Hockey Ops, he's one of the best leaders I've ever worked with. Should be in the National Hockey League. He'll get things straightened out. Pete Anholt, everything he's done in leverage, one of my closest friends in the game. I know those guys are taking it hard. I know those guys are wearing it. It's hard, but it wasn't out of a lack of expertise or work ethic or good people be involved. It didn't go their way, and and at the end of the day, let's keep in mind that hey, and I'm not a social media guy, Ballsy. I don't read stuff. I don't follow that stuff. Keyboard warriors that sit in their mom's basement in their boxer shorts and rip people. I got no time for them. To be honest, I don't take advice from. I don't worry about criticism from anybody that I wouldn't take advice from. Let's say that. But let's keep in mind that we're talking about 17 and 18 and 19-year-old kids. You're seeing people go after them. You're hearing things about death threats to player that took a penalty late in the quarterfinal. Come on, let's be realistic about reality. And Canada will bounce back. We are the best hockey nation in the world. The Four Nations will be a great tournament. But next year in Minnesota, Canada will be right there, and don't be surprised if they win gold in Minnesota next year.
When you talk about how great Canada is, Celebrini's playing for the Sharks and Bedard, the former Pat, playing for the Blackhawks. And Bedard's sophomore season hasn't been as splendid as the first season, but he is on a bit of a tear here lately. I think we do lose sight of it. Do we put too much pressure on these guys? Yes, nobody's crying for Connor Bedard. He's making money. He's a face of a franchise. But the dude is 19 years old in a hockey hotbed, Chicago. Like, think about that. He's 19 fucking years old.
Well, I'll get to Bedard in a second, but you mentioned Celebrini, you mentioned Bedard. Don't forget about Zach Benson in Buffalo too. All three of those guys are in the NHL, and they're all still eligible to play on the World Junior team. Nobody else had a player in the NHL except for the U.S. They had one guy in San Jose with Celebrini, Will Smith. Mm-hmm. So again, the reality of the situation, and being with Hockey Canada, managing those teams, we know we're going to be the one team every year at the World Juniors that we're going to be missing 1, 2, or 3 guys in the NHL. We get that, and but yeah, you think about that tournament. You think about Bedard, Benson, and Celebrini there. It's different, and nobody's making excuses. Nobody's looking for moral victories just because guys are in the NHL. Everybody understands that, but. Yeah, and Connor Bedard, Bedsy, rookie of the year last year, and he's in a situation where Chicago's not a great team. Chicago's a rebuilding team. They're a retooling team. They're a very young team. They're so that's and the expectations around Connor and being 19 years old and the expectations to produce. Well, with all due respect to Chicago, and Kyle Davidson, the GM there, has been very upfront about the rebuild and the process. But what does Connor Bedard look like on the Vegas Golden Knights right now? Or what does he look like on the Carolina Hurricanes or the Toronto Maple Leafs? Let's be realistic about all the different situations in terms of young players, their opportunity, who they're playing with, where a team is at. Are they contenders? Are they building? So, you know what? Connor's a hell of a kid. As you know, he's a hell of a player. A little bit up and down sophomore season, but like you said, he's been tearing it up of late, and he's a star. He's going to be a great NHL player, but there's a process for him, and there's a process for the Blackhawks to get better.
Okay, so what's your process as we're around the trade deadline here? You've moved some guys out. We could sit here for 2 hours and talk about that. How are you happy with what how are you happy with what you got accomplished? You got a lot of picks now. You restocked the cupboard, and what do you want to see from your team going forward? The players that are here wearing Pat's jerseys the rest of this year.
Well, we've been upfront and transparent about where we've been at the last year and a half, Ballsy, and where we need to get to and what we need to do. So yeah, it's tough. It's been a tear down in terms of the older players, and a big part of what we've been doing here over the last 7 to 10 days, or even longer, is the situation we're in. There's a second part to the moves that you make. You make the moves, you build up your draft capital, you add young players, you move out veteran guys, you trade a Tanner Howe and do what you need to do. But at the same time, the opportunity for our players to play, the young players, and for them to get better and for them to develop, that's the roster management part of that we had to look after here before the deadline today. And it was important that we were at 7 defensemen. It was important we were at 13 forwards. It was important that we were putting our young players in positions to develop and get better. So we moved out at 19-year-old Chichkin, and part of that was we moved out some guys that in all reality probably weren't part of our future next year. So do what we can to get the assets that we can, continue to build, and play the hell out of, play our young guys a ton. And that's what we're going to do the rest of the year. We moved Chichkin out to get to 7D. We moved Wilson out to get to 13 forwards. We had a late deal today to move Shantz out. We added a 16-year-old prospect we really like. We added another second-round pick. We've brought in another 17-year-old player, affiliate player, to join us for the rest of the year, Christian Lassell. I want our team to work hard. I want our team to remain as competitive as possible. And at the same time, there's a balance between that and making sure our young players are playing and they're getting better. And that's another significant part of the rebuild, is that our young players are getting better and we're a better team next year. We take that step and we build from there.
So you got 9, now the junior hockey, and I've said this for a long time, junior hockey is the hardest thing to predict with young kids, and you draft a kid and he moves, I'm just hypothetically saying, from BC, and he's got to come to Saskatchewan, never been in a prairie winter before, it's cold, billets, the whole 9 yards. So it's very unpredictable. And to build a team, you got to know what you're doing, you got to have a little bit of luck too, and you've shown before you know how to do it. So I think the team's in capable hands. But I'm a fan of here's a but though. I'm a fan of the Regina Pats. Probably not your job to sell it because you're the GM. There's other guys that sell it to the fan base. But sell it to me right now. If I'm watching this or listening to this, sell me on what you're trying to do here, and how you think all this draft capital can make this team a regular winner, somebody that a team that's at the top of the standings or right around it, even though junior hockey's cyclical.
Yeah, I think, Ballsy, the first part of all that is that understanding the situation that we're in, and not what you want to do, but what you need to do. Okay, and I get it. Not everybody might agree with this move or that move, or but the reality is that there is a process here to do what we needed to do, so that this was something that was in the short term, 2 or 3 years, as opposed to the long term, 4 or 5 years. We had to get it right in some areas in terms of, and part of all that, Ballsy, and I've talked about this before, is, this goes back to 2017. You're in the WHL final. You're balancing the WHL final and a chance to win and playing and hosting the Memorial Cup the following year. And then you hit COVID, and then you get Bedard and all those things. So there's a process here that got us to this point. Evaluate, put a plan in place, and try and build. So what I would say to our fans and their patience is, first of all, I hope that they're starting to see some of the excitement around our young players. In terms of, I believe that we've upgraded our talent, we've upgraded our skill set. I think, and it comes from a lot of our 17-year-old players and that group in terms of what we're building. When I talk about draft capital, like in junior hockey, you have to draft well, you have to develop your players. When you're looking to improve your team, whether that's through the draft or whether that's through trades, you need to have draft picks. You just watched Spokane add Andrew Crystal, and they had to include 2 firsts in the deal. You just watched Lethbridge add Caden Price, and they had to include a 17-year-old guy who was a first-round pick and a first. You watched Lethbridge add Yeager and Unger, 2 first-round picks, so on and so on. So there's the totality of the assets that you have around players and draft capital, that those draft picks, whether you draft with all those picks or you utilize those picks in trades, you need those to be able to improve your team. Now, is that when you're improving your team during a rebuild? Is that when you're have a chance to win, that you have those assets to be able to add that Andrew Crystal to put you over the top and try to win? Those are the things that we're trying to put in place. We're asking our fan base, trying to be as transparent as I can through this process, asking our fans for patience. I think a lot of our great fans who know the team, have a good understanding of what we're trying to do. Again, we'll take criticism. People won't understand. People won't agree with what we've done. Been doing this long enough. The skin is thick enough. It is what it is. I have to do what I feel is in the best interest of our hockey club, our players, our owners, our staff, and all those things to get us to where we want to be. We want to build this the right way. We want to build a consistent, competitive team. And we don't want to just build it to win a playoff round here and there. We want to win a WHL championship. We want to get back to the Memorial Cup. And that's why we're doing what we're doing, Ballsy.
Okay, last question for you. How tough is it to sit in that chair and call in a Shantz or a Ty Spencer, and those kind of guys after what they've given to the hockey team?
Yeah, it's tough. It's really tough. Met with Zachary Shantz here half an hour ago or so. Great kid. I love Zach as a young man. I guess the solace in the situation is that, we send him to a team where he has a chance to win a championship. They're the best team in the league right now. And he's a 19-year-old that, so it is tough. Like this is tough. It's tough on our players. It's tough on our staff. It's tough on our fans. But all I can tell you is that we are working collectively. We are working hard. We are trying to do the right things to get to where everybody wants us to be. And hey, Ballsy, at the end of the day, if we don't get there, then that's my job on the line a year or 2 years or 3 years down the road, whenever ownership, So I understand that. I've been doing that long enough. I believe in what we're doing here. I believe in the people we have. I believe we're going to get there, and I think people will be excited at some point along the way here, and hopefully that'll be in the next year or two.
Great talking hockey and rock and roll, man, with you. I can't wait. Maybe this should be the segment, hockey and rock and hockey, or something like that, with Al Millar.
Well, Ballsy, let me know when we can do just rock and roll. I'd love to get on with you and just talk about music.
Let's do that sometime.
And then you're not asking me to, not that you were challenging me to defend what I'm doing, but you're not asking me to sell it. We can just talk about concerts and rock and roll.
Awesome. Can't wait, man. Hey, thanks for your time, Al. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ballsy. All the best.
All right, we're going to wrap this thing up. Just one note on the CFL, a couple notes. Folarin Oromalade goes from Toronto to Calgary, where his CFL career started, in exchange for Cameron Judge. So Judge going to TO. He was there before, wasn't he? He went Riders, TO, Calgary, back to TO, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, that's exactly how it went. So Cameron Judge back in Toronto, joining Ryder Varga, who was on the Ballsy Uncut podcast a few days ago. Coming up on our next edition, we're going to talk to, finally, because I had a technical snafu, we're going to hear from Carter Gusway, the offensive coordinator of the Regina Thunder, new OC. First time they've had one in years. And we're going to hear from William Stanback from the Ottawa Red Blacks. Goes from Montreal to BC. BC picks up James Butler, who goes back from Hamilton to BC. And then Stanback goes to Ottawa. So we got Willie Stanback on the show in the next edition. And we're also going to hear from Mike Kelly of the NHL Network. Talk about some of the goings-on in the NHL. Want to thank all our great sponsors. Ward Tirecraft, 101 Dudney Avenue. AGT Foods, the Gang of District Brewing with their Super Squeeze Seltzer. Paul Waldo at Royal LePage in Regina, getting the real estate game with Paul. Also, Gerhardt Studios, Nicole and Dean. And I feel like I'm missing one. Oh, the Boys Next Door, window cleaning, snow removal. They also do the track lighting under your eaves troughs. Check out Nathan and Landon and the gang. Okay. By the way, I want to give a shout out to what I do in the daytime. Crestview Chrysler, 601 Albert Street. Give me a call. 306-526-7979. Sorry, I'm yawning. I stayed up late watching a couple of shows and almost overslept this podcast, to be quite honest with you. Sunday's a great day. I get to have Sunday off and I get to have Tuesday off. So, yeah. Anyway, and feeling a little bit under the weather here. So, I don't know, might just have a magic bag on the old stomach today. So we've got the CFL schedule coming out in a few weeks, I guess. I don't know why it takes so long for a 9-team league to put out a schedule, but Farhan Lalji's reporting that we won't have a touchdown series game. There won't be one in Atlanta, Canada, which they didn't last year. And they had one, Touchdown Pacific in Victoria. There won't be one there either. So I'm not sure if that's because we're getting a new commissioner and we're having a different vision or what. But that's the one thing the CFL needs. Best game on the planet, the 3-down game. It's a mom and pop league, so people can relate to it. But we need to market it better, and we need to have more teams. However that looks, they need more teams in the CFL. Enjoy Sunday football, and we will talk to you in a couple days. And we're also going to catch up with, in that time, with Zelko Stefanovic from SAS Selects Football. They have the greatest show on turf. Teams from Mexico, California, Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan taking part in an indoor tournament at the Yard Center.